Welcome to Magic and Mysticism, the podcast starring Tommy Burnett, New York City's favorite mentalist, where every Friday afternoon he interviews a mystery performer while they discuss the subject of magic and mentalism as an art form. Today's guest is Master Magician, Herren, as Faust. So please sit back and get comfortable, as I introduce your host, Mr. Tommy Burnett.
Hey guys, Tommy Burnett here with another very cool episode of Magic and Mysticism, the podcast. Today we have a good friend of mine, Herren, as Faust. But before I bring him out, a mutual friend of ours just left a comment. Nick Sorensen said, I've been waiting all day for this episode. So when we bring him out, here is Herren as Faust. Hey Chris, how are you, my friend?
Thank you so much for having me, Tommy. I'm quite excited about this, and just thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, it's my pleasure. I was jumping right into it. Before I ask you any questions, why don't you give us a little intro about who you are and what it is exactly that you do?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Tommy. I'm a pantomime artist and a magician. And, I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and I grew up with doing magic ever since I was a kid. As you could see, I've amassed and collected so many things throughout my life, and it's all in this room. I think, if I were to describe the magic that I do a lot of pantomime and mask work, and what I do love most about magic, Tommy, is the storytelling aspect of it. And for the most part, although I don't tell stories through dialogue or words, I try to tell it through my movement and gestures. But that's a gist of my magic, and I just love magic in general. As you can see behind me, this is my life.
Yeah, well, I for one love your setup. I have behind this green screen, I have a wall similar to yours. But I think mine is a lot messier. Yeah, yours is very well planned out, and I really appreciate that. So, how did you get into magic? Where was your start?
Yeah, I guess my story is, it's just like anybody else's. When you're a kid, you see someone on TV. And for me, I remember watching a TV on my grandmother's old television. And you probably remember, Tommy, there were black and white televisions back in the day.
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I don't want to date us, but it wasn't. But yeah, I was watching this TV as a little kid, and I seen this gentleman by the name of Eric Weiss. And some of you out there, right? Some of the people, like the aficionados out there, will know that Eric Weiss was Harry Houdini. And I was watching this documentary on this black and white television, and I seen him do these escapes. And that really sparked my imagination. Obviously, I'm intrigued by that era of magic. And when I seen Harry Houdini do his escapes and his card tricks, I was just intrigued and astonished. And I wanted to replicate that sort of thing that he was doing, because to me, Harry Houdini was just a regular guy, and he was the first taste of what I saw as a superhero. And, as a kid, I was just trying to replicate the rope routines and just really intrigued. I really didn't have this bug, Tommy, to perform. I just wanted, to understand more about these things that he was doing, because I know that I was just hooked on this thing called magic. And then throughout my life, I would just read and go to the library and go to magic shops and, collect these magic tricks, and it would just amount to that. But it wouldn't be later on to life where I really found magic as this artistic expression. And that's really the beginnings of my magical journey. It's just seeing, Harry Houdini on TV, on a black and white television, you know. But if you want to talk about the style of magic that I do now, it's that was inspired by a modern magician, and his name is Jeff McBride. And who Jeff McBride is. For people out there who don't know who that is, I seen him in the 90s doing a show on TV called, I think it was called World's Greatest Magic, right? And he did a mask act. And I was just so intrigued by his theatrical style of performing that I was hooked on that. And I said, this guy is really expressing a lot of Japanese kabuki, pantomime, things that I was really interested in. And but even still, I was just more intrigued by the visual display of what he was doing and his style of magic. I actually met Jeff in my early 20s at Caesar's Palace, at something called the Magical Empire. And yeah, and he was performing there. And Tommy, I back then I wasn't really performing magic. I was just fooling around. And he did this thing called the Sorcerer's Apprentice, where he chooses one kid on the stage and he brings them up and he does his version of the miser's dream, where he's pulling coins out of your ears and nose. And out of all the kids there, Tommy, he pulled me up on stage. And I was just ecstatic. And I was 20 years old, so I wasn't a kid, but I was wondering, why did he pull me up? Why did he pull me up? But at the end of that performance, he did something. He brought out a wand, and it was this nice orange wand, and it said, "What you believe is real is real." Jeff McBride inscribed on there. And he had said, the great magicians of the past passed down their knowledge to the apprentices by this wand. Is a story like that. This wand was a symbol of knowledge being passed down to students of magic, and he had passed it down to me. He probably have said this to hundreds and hundreds of kids, but for me, it just sparked something within me that, I was thinking like, wow, magic is part of my life, and perhaps this was the beginning. And for me, I thought it was, because I kept that wand, and I still keep it today. And I always look back at it as my first step into this huge magical journey that I am currently taking. And later on, Tommy, as you know, I started studying under Jeff McBride, and that's a lot of what I do today is influenced by him.
Wow.
Yep.
So a mutual friend of ours, Ed Underwood, says that's a great story.
Yeah. Hello, Edward.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks for watching, and Nick.
Yeah, Edward's a great friend. Edward's a great friend.
He is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I first met him when I was studying under Kenton, and we've been great pals ever since.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So Wow, I've been thinking about what you just said, and you said so much in only this short time. Um, and I want to make sure that our audience really grasp um, what you're getting at, because I
Yes.
think there are so many musicians, myself included, who at one point in their um, career or stream of consciousness, as far as that magic goes, they get stuck in this thing about how it's um, all about the tricks
Hmm.
that you do. And with me, I got to a point later on in my career where
Yes.
I realized there's, there's more to it than that.
Yes.
Um, and that we have we have a big responsibility here,
Yes.
um, to to pass on um, messages of hope and enlightenment and to help raise people up. Um, and I know I've never met Jeff. I've seen Jeff perform live a number of times, and I'm hoping to get him on the show one day. Um, but I know
Um,
that he's about giving positive messages as well, and
yes. You
so
bring up
yeah.
a great point. You bring up a great point. You know, magic is passed down from master to student in more ways than people can imagine, because a lot of the things that are out there are not written down. And I think Eugene Berger had once said that magic is passed on through whispers, you know.
Mm,
And I think that he meant was is that it's the secrets of magic, this trade that really is just handed down by word of mouth from one teacher to the next, and then that cycle occurs. In fact, Tommy, what I'd like to do, because I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there that don't have never seen me perform, and you brought up a great point that, you know, teachers like Jeff McBride pass on their work. And what I'd like to show you is probably the very first thing that he has ever showed me. And and it was a routine that he once did, and he passed on to me. And it kind of gives people a good idea of what I do. So if they're out there watching, I definitely would love to show them. I'm going to step to the side here, Tommy, grab my mask, and then I'll show you if that's okay with you.
I would love that. I would
Okay,
love
let me
that.
grab my mask.
Okay, so if you're just tuning in, we are about to see Chris Herren as Faust perform something that was passed on to him by one of his teachers.
Thank you, Tommy. This, what I would like to show everyone today is a very old style of magic. And as Tommy had said, this was passed down to me by Jeff McBride, and we came up with this sort of routine together, and also this pantomime act. But the act itself is an old Victorian style. And what I love about Victorian culture is that it can be beautiful and also quite strange at the same time. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do hope all of you enjoy. Thank you so much. And back to you, Tommy.
That was lovely. That was so beautiful.
Thank you
Wow.
so much. So that's the style of performing I do, and hopefully, it kind of exemplifies that sort of storytelling that I love. And so that particular piece, believe it or not, me and Jeff had worked on that for about a year, and it's changed through that year. But it's a very simple routine, and it's just the fact that you constantly look at something and say, how can I do it better? How can I do it better? How can I do it better? But but yeah, Nick says, how often I'm so used to cleaning. My whole floor is filled with confetti, and that's the only problem with doing that routine is you got to have a good vacuum, Tommy, a good vacuum for that routine.
Yeah.
But I do love it, and you know what, Tommy, I used to use have you ever seen the small white confetti, the
Yeah.
the snowstorm? Oh boy, that was a nightmare. So if
Yeah.
you can see, this is the confetti I use now, and it's in the shape of a heart.
Yeah.
And what I love about magic is that it is a metaphor, and I know that these are topics that you talk about on your podcast. Is the deeper meaning behind magic, and part of that routine and part of what I do is a metaphor for transformation and love and just life in general, and sometimes even tragedy. And
Mm.
although I'm not saying much while performing, these metaphors are at play. And I think you mentioned magic can truly be more than just tricks. And I think if we approach magic in that way, it becomes so much more than just seeing this trick being performed, which is fine, but I like that kind of magic when there is something deeper behind it. And
Mm-hmm.
it may not be appropriate all the time, but sometimes it is appropriate. And when it is, I think that's when real magic happens, is when that meaning really comes forward when a trick is performed, and then it becomes so much more than just this magic trick. And I know that you do the same thing, and
I try. I try. Yeah. Yeah. Uh, as you know, I do mostly mechanism. I do some magic nowadays, but
yes,
and I try and put as much meaning into it as possible. But I also my character is as just this guy who does weird things, and
yes.
um, that's where the meaning is for me. Is I'm just a guy who can do stuff, and it seems to be working. Uh,
And
uh,
you have to try it. You have, Jeff has always told me that if you're going to, because my character initially was quite strange and peculiar just by the mask alone, and I'm sure everyone can understand, but he had always told me, take it out to the deepest edge of that sort of strangeness, and then reel it back, because then you would know how far to go and how far not to go. And I
mhm,
think that sort of experimentation with character and persona is very important. And initially I was really taking it to a different direction with this character, but I would have never known where to bring it back to if it weren't for that process. and I appreciate what you're saying, because you definitely have to experiment with, your,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm still experimenting. you
yeah.
know,
Oh
um,
boy, yeah, I
yeah,
trust me. It's an
yeah. I
experiment
know
every
you
day.
yeah, I know
Yeah,
you are too.
yeah.
Um, and um, I don't think I have to say this because I have you on the show, but you are definitely one of my favorite
Oh,
musicians. Yeah.
likewise, Tommy. It's always an honor just to work with, amazing and talented people. Me and you, we work together on Buddy Aid, and
Yeah.
that lineup right there is just an amazing
Oh my
cast. And
God. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that's another thing about this magical journey, is that you live on the East Coast, I believe,
Yep.
and I live on the West. And had this pandemic had never happened, who knows if our paths would have crossed.
Yeah.
And that is the one benefit I see through all this, is that it made us connect, with people. And trust me, I've worked with a lot of people, and I think through this medium, it I've had the ability and the honor of working with so many talented people, you included, and I'm so grateful for that. Even though, and Nick is one of them. Nick, who just commented there,
Yeah.
our kind of connection sort of was just by chance. He approached me for a podcast, and I came on, and then since then we became such wonderful friends. And then
Yeah.
we led into Buddy Aid, which is a virtual variety show that we do once a month for
Yeah.
a great cause at that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
There's always a different cause. So,
yes,
um,
but as far as magic has been concerned, and I know that this is something to be talked about with the pandemic, Tommy, is I was a live performer, and Nick is correct. We are brothers.
yes.
Good to see him always. But before COVID, I had performed live. That was what I did, just like everyone else here. And I know that this platform of virtual has been difficult, even for me. I
Yeah.
I barely owned a laptop prior to COVID, you know, and a good friend of mine by the name of Jonathan Molo, and you know who that is. Once
Yeah.
COVID happened, he asked me to come on to this virtual magic show. And I was like, well, what's that? And he said, you got to come on Zoom. And I said, I don't even know what Zoom is, you know? And it just started like that. And then I realized that it was an adjustment to performing, because you really can't do the interaction, and even with me, I used to really get up close and personal with people, and to have them interact with me, even though I'm a
hmm
mime. And here on the virtual world, it has been a challenge.
I bet.
But I think it also has pushed me to look beyond this as this limitation. And it allowed me to try and figure out, how do I connect even more with people through this medium. And and I one of the things that I did, Tommy, is I wrote a thesis, believe it or not. That's how much time I had. I wrote a thesis, and it was, I think, about 4,000 words. But I did it for a reason. I was applying for the Magic Circle in London, which is a very prestigious organization.
Yeah.
But I wanted to challenge myself. You could audition through performance, but you can also audition through written thesis to demonstrate your knowledge, yeah, of magic. So, and I could talk on and on about the Magic Circle, but I was really intrigued because it's one of the oldest magic organizations in the world. They're over 100 years old.
Yeah.
And I had written a thesis on just that very thing, how to connect with an audience. And I focused on movement and gestures from because my premise is that the spoken language, us talking as a language and a form of communication, has only existed for 2.5 million years.
Yeah.
But pantomime and movement and gestures like smiling has existed for over 17 million years. So in our human DNA, we are already ingrained to understand a smile, because a smile is a smile across all cultures, is it not?
Yeah.
So I was intrigued by that. And what I found is by learning pantomime is that you can communicate these things to the person on the other side. For example, if you have a card in your hand and you hold it here, it's different what you're communicating by holding a card here.
Mm.
The minute you cross that threshold and you make that gesture to move towards an individual, this gesture is a gesture of an attempt to connect.
Yeah.
Because I'm bridging. There's so many gestures that I wrote about and observed that I was accepted into the Magic Circle as a result of my study into that. And so virtual has really...
deservedly too. Well deservedly.
Thank you, Tommy.
Always been a dream of mine to be part of the Magic Circle ever since I was a little kid. Yeah.
And there is, and because of this virtual platform, Tommy, initially they had required you to travel to London. And I go to London quite often because I just love the place.
Mm-hmm.
But this time they opened the auditions up to do it virtually, where you perform for them. So I would recommend that if you're ever interested in doing something like that, it is quite accessible to do that these days.
Cool.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's another thing that has pushed me in the virtual environment and during this time was to really look at performing. And because I didn't spend too much time traveling, I had really honed down, to look at what I was doing as far as technique and a lot of time practicing. And what you see today is just, that sort of time and effort being placed in because of the lack of performing live. And I really had that opportunity now to get better. And and that's always been in the back of my head is how do I become better? How do I become more technical?
Mm-hmm.
So.
I was fine.
I know you were. I know you mentioned the Magic Circle. For people out there who don't know what that is, the Magic Circle is in London, and it's much like the Magic Castle in Hollywood, which I'm also a member of. But if that's something that, for me, I think it was just a nice sort of challenge for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And another reason to connect with people in the community to learn more about magic, because there's just so much to learn about magic.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was going to try and add to that, but I think you said it perfectly. So you've said a lot and you've answered a lot of my questions without me having asked wasn't great because
No, Tommy, I know that people are wondering about the mask. So if you're
yeah,
interested in about that,
yeah.
so this mask is it was initially this act that I wanted to come up with, and I had initially I mentioned earlier in the show that I didn't want to perform. I just loved watching people perform, and I read and it was a thing. But about 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer,
Oh,
and I'm okay now. But
yeah.
during that time, I had developed this Parkinsonian tremor in my hand where I couldn't do magic at all.
Oh,
And
wow.
and needless to say, it was quite a dark time for me because I didn't know what was going to happen, or if I was going to get through it or not. So I started writing a lot, and I didn't just want to write like a journal. I wanted to write how I was feeling, or a story about someone going through the similar situation. And this character, Faust, was the inspiration behind that. And Faust was this very tragic character that I came up with. And he's a pantomime, of course, but the whole idea about the mask was that it represented this guy who wanted to change, and very desperately at that. Now, I'm not sure if you've read the book Faust by Goethe, and I think it was written in the 18th century, about the
Mm-hmm.
guy who sold his soul to the devil for
Yep.
ultimate power. Such a great story. I
Yeah.
love that story, by the way, Tommy. And I wanted to make my own version of it. And so I asked the question, if Faust was placed in a position where the devil would ask him, if you could change, would you sell your soul to the devil? And I had thought about that. What would drive a man to sell his soul to the devil? That's very extreme, is it not? And so I thought about it, and I said, perhaps if Faust was in that position, he would, because he was desperate. And desperation can cause a lot of things. But I wanted to internalize that feeling and create that character based on that emotion, that raw emotion of desperation. And so that's what Faust is. He didn't sell his soul to the devil, but he's desperate to change, desperate to be something that he isn't. So when he performs, Tommy, everything that he does is just a daydream, what he daydreams about.
Mm.
Who he really is this really tragic character. In fact, I do have a performance that I'd love to show you. It's
Yeah.
it's it's called the Broken Music Box, and you've probably seen it before. I know Edward is out there, and Edward is a musician, and we were working on some music. I would love to show you that piece with that music later on, because I'm
Yes.
trying to refine it. But I do have a music that I can use now if you would like to see this particular
Of
performance.
course. Yeah.
So so
We
this
give you
story
okay.
so this story, Tommy, is called The Broken Music Box, and it was written from a perspective when I was going through cancer, and it was written from the perspective that this character Faust had his heart broken, and he was really longing it to be fixed. And so I hope that this performance somewhat represents that very perspective, and it's called The Broken Music Box, everyone. The broken music box. Thank you so much, Tommy.
Yes, I love that routine.
Now, I do want to talk about that. That was one of my first things that I did, and Edward there. Thank you, Edward. You know, that was actually inspired by someone by the name of Luna Shimada, who helped me out, and her dad is a very famous magician, and she came up with the idea of making this ballerina, and it reminded me, of my daughter, who is also a ballerina. But I've been working with Edward on a song that we just finished, so I'd love to debut that. And it exemplifies that whole feeling of desperation, and hopefully I can show that to everyone out there later on.
Yeah, that would be great.
And I thank you, Tommy, for allowing me to show that wonderful piece.
Oh, believe me, it's my pleasure. Um, yeah. If I'm not mistaken, you did that at the last birthday, and I thought it was beautiful then, and
Thank you.
seeing it again now, it is a wonderful piece.
Thank
No, thank you. Um, so again, you said a lot.
No, I know the questions too, Tommy. So
Oh, yeah.
you gave me the. I did my homework. I was like, I don't want to get blindsided by anything. So I was like, man, I gotta read up because Tommy's gonna be drilling me on these questions. There was an interesting question that you had on there, Tommy.
Yeah.
Was it was a question on, have I ever had like an embarrassing moment in my magic career? And I thought about that. And yeah, so many times, right? I mean, if you're a performer, you're gonna have some utter failures out there, and it's worth talking about because a lot of the times magicians don't talk about these things because they want to present something polished.
Exactly.
Right. And like every performance goes great, but for me, boy, oh boy, especially with the mask alone, because I can't see and things like that. But earlier in my career, I didn't talk at all. I went on the stage, did my thing. My music is my communication. And there was a point I could almost hear it right from the get-go. My act was 15 minutes. I do a variety show, here live, and I go all over doing my Faust act. And you know what? I could already hear the music kind of going out, and I was like, oh boy, it's not me, because my music is, I always check it, but you can hear the speakers going out. And at the final, in my final act, in the middle of it, the music just goes completely out. And here I am with my mask, not breaking character. And I had that moment. Do I just stop what I'm doing? Or, or do I keep going? And so my pantomime training kicked in and I just kept on going. And fortunately, the audience was very supportive. But for me, it was just a heartbreak because I knew that it took away from that sort of climax and that experience from people, because I want to transport people into this world of music and whimsicalness. And here I am with no music at all. But the one thing I did learn from that is, when something does fail, have a backup and, have an escape, or have, something there that you can automatically go on. And I always think about, okay, well, what if something goes wrong? What if, so, that's for me was a great lesson, because I never ever, um, go out there without having a backup. And for me, that was very embarrassing, because you want to do your best, you know.
Yeah.
Also, another thing too, Tommy, is like when you walk out on stage and your music doesn't come on, and you're just standing there like, what's going on?
Oh, baby. Okay.
But
Yeah.
but you know what? It's a lesson, right? You won't ever learn how to fix these things unless it happens to you, under that. So
Exactly. Yeah.
that was something I did wanted to talk to you about, because I think it's very important to talk about it, because I know that the philosophy of magic is what you encompass here.
Mhm.
And as much as magic looks great for the most part, there are those things that we can learn from through failure and through just utter trials. And Faust has been the meaning behind that, behind everything that Faust is, has always been this sort of a trial of life, and that's
Yeah.
why I love telling or showing Faust. Even though I only have a handful of things that I do with him, it really speaks about life, and at least my life, you know so thank you so much for giving me the platform, Tommy.
Uh, definitely my pleasure, and you always welcome back
Yeah.
anytime. It's funny 'cause that's exactly the question I was going to ask you. Um,
Exactly.
so maybe you can be a mind reader. Uh, so I mean, I asked you how did you get the idea to use math, but I think you
Yep.
pretty much covered that. How has COVID and being in quarantine affected you as a performer?
Well, Tommy, great question. I definitely had big aspirations before COVID to perform live. And obviously all the work that, I had in play just disappeared over, a month, 2 months, and it just all went away.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, the one thing that I've learned through COVID is that there are so many different ways to communicate with people. This platform is just one way to communicate. And I think, we can wait for the live to come back, and it will come back. It will come back. But I think, unfortunately, this platform, I mean, not unfortunately, but I think I've come to the realization that this is going to still be around,
Mm-hmm.
because it just connects people,
Yeah.
and we don't necessarily have to do magic on it, but it certainly has allowed me to reflect just on my social life, that we can just at a very moment away reach out to people across the world and across the United States, like me and you. We can just get together at a very instant. And before COVID, I have never thought about doing something like that. It would either be a phone call or an email.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I think I appreciate more the situation, not just from a magic perspective, but from a social perspective. But to be honest, Tommy, I think I'm going to still be performing like this virtually after
Yeah.
things normalize.
Me
I
too.
enjoy it. I guess I just enjoy it.
I don't.
I yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, you started a podcast, and I used to listen to podcasts, just the audio version. But now in your format, I can actually see you, which for me it's a little bit more personable to see the people on your show. And I appreciate that very much because I'm a visual person, and
Mhm.
I like to see that sort of interaction between people, visually at least.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah,
Um, like I was telling you before the show, um, I I wanted to have a platform for not only famous people but people who have been working and deserve to be seen. You know.
yes, yes.
So I'm maybe even more happy that you're on the show than you are having me ask you.
Trust me, I'm very grateful just to be able to talk, to you about my magic, and that you were even just interested in my magic alone, because not everyone is into pantomime and this sort of style of magic, and I accept that. And I'm just appreciative that people like you uh, understand that what I do is just who I am. and
Hmm.
and if you enjoy it, all the better, all the better. And I can't tell you enough, Tommy, how thankful I am just to be on here to share magic with you on your show.
Well, we can keep going back and forth.
Yeah, I know, right? We-
But I'll tell you a little secret, and most people don't know about me. I had a pantomime act back in the 70s.
oh,
Um,
wow.
and it wasn't. I can say now, like almost 40 years later, it wasn't that great an act, but it was okay. Um, but I think the main reason why it wasn't that good is because I really didn't want to do pantomime. Everyone was telling me because of my speech impediment that I should do a silent act, and I felt like everybody was trying to shut me up. Um, I did it for almost
Yeah.
almost 8, 9 years, and
Wow.
I was like, you know, I have a voice that I want to have heard. For took me a very long time to have the guts to you know
Yes.
so in in a sense having this platform was good for me as well because I'm able to say my truth and as far as marriage is concerned and having guests like yourself on the show really exemplifies what I'm trying to accomplish here. So thank you for that.
I think you said something that really resonates with me, and you mentioned having a voice, and whether it is an expression of magic or something else, it certainly is one of the hardest things to find. And I'm glad that you found it here. And I'm thankful that I found the voice through Faust. And if anyone out there was wondering, who's just starting out in magic, I think that would be a great advice, actually, is to find your voice in magic, and or any art. And I think you'll get the most out of it if it's authentic and sincere, you
Yeah.
know. But that certainly is something I think about and grateful for, that this sort of
Yeah.
finding of the voice.
Definitely. Definitely. So you kind of just touched on it, but what if somebody very new to magic, and wants to pursue a career in magic? What advice, besides
Yes.
what you said, like for somebody who's just brand new and they, they want to do what we do?
Yeah, if people are out there starting in magic and mentalism, my advice really is to, well, you can do magic as a hobby, and there's nothing wrong with that. I did for years. But I think at some point in my journey in magic, I had to ask myself, where do I want to take it? And where do I want to go with it? And I knew that I wanted to perform and do it professionally. So my advice is, one, finding a voice is going to be a process. That's a given. But to have the right people around you, find the right people to kind of mentor you
Yeah.
and teach you, so you don't have this long process of trial and failure. And that's where I found Jeff. Is he reduced my level of mistakes.
Mm.
And you know just to learn, I mean, you could learn from books, but I think you should get someone there to really guide you through. The one thing that I did at some point, it's all going to come down to you as a professional, is to really to to put the time into magic. As much as you put in, that's how much magic is going to give back to you. Jeff once told me, I asked him, what does it take to take magic to that different level? I'm not talking about being a celebrity or a star in magic, but I just said, I want to be good. And his answer to me was, 1 hour a day is better than 12 hours on a weekend. And
Mm.
so since then, I've put 1 hour, at least 1 hour every day, into this art. And if you really want to be that good, I think, it's going to take a long time. Even for me, it's years, and I'm not where I, believe I want to be.
Yeah.
But I think if you have that ethic of just putting in the time and that 1 hour a day, it'll get you that much closer to where you should be. And that it would be my advice to people, wanting to take that first step in magic.
Excellent. Yeah. Excellent. Um, so I don't know who this is, but somebody said excellent advice. So
Thank
um,
you. Thank you so much.
sorry, I don't know who you are, but it did say in the word below Hey, baby. If this is Ben, baby, he got a haircut.
He wants to be on the show too.
He goes, aw,
Thank you, Facebook
yeah,
user. Thank you so much.
thank you for giving. Yeah, so there's a link below this video. You can click on that, and it's very quick. They ask you for your name, and that way we know who you are on here.
Yeah.
Really good. It's a very good program. Today,
Oh,
thank you.
yes, Edward. Thank you, Edward. I'll pay you later, Edward.
And Facebook user, I really need to find a mentor. You know, they say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and I'm sure that will happen for you too. Keep your eyes open, um, and the right person will be with
Yeah.
you. It took me many years to get in contact with Kenton,
Yes.
mostly because I was afraid, so I wasn't ready. But once I got ready, he was there for me, and I was taking me from here to here, which is a good start. Uh, from here to here.
Kenton Nepper. Yeah. He's amazing. Kenton Nepper is amazing.
So hey, Rico. Thanks for watching. Chico is a really great musician, and we've got a few
I see, Bo.
together. And wait, who's here? Sorry. I don't know what the first thing here is excellent advice.
Yes.
But cool. Yeah. So we're near the end of the show. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to talk about? I know you sent me a graphic here of and this is going to cover both of us. But
Yes. That's my live stream right there.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to talk about that for a minute or two.
Yeah. If anyone's out there and they want to, follow me and whatnot, I do a live stream typically weekly, much like what Tommy does here. So, I could use the support. I'd love to have you guys and, share magic. And for me, it's all about just sharing magic, And, Tommy, I know we have to go. And
we don't have to go. I mean, okay, as long as but I'm out of questions. So
now it's my turn to ask the questions.
Yes.
Well, Tommy, since we have like a couple minutes, is it okay if I do one last performance for everyone?
I would love it. I would love it, and I'm sure our audience will love it too.
Yes, if I may, I'd like to. Yeah, if I may, I'd like to do one last one for everyone out there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming and visiting me and Tommy today on his podcast. And some of you who are probably coming in late and whatnot are probably wondering about the mask. And so this story is about the mask that I have in my hand. Initially, I created this mask because it was an inspiration from my time with cancer. And this mask had saved my life because it gave me purpose. It was a metaphor initially for desperate change, a change from the situation that I was in. But later on, it became this reminder that a peculiar thing such as this mask can lead you to many unexpected and wonderful journeys, which it has for me. Edgar Allan Poe had once said that there could be no exquisite beauty without strangeness in its proportion. What I think he meant was that life can begin rather strangely, but it can end quite beautifully. And so this final performance is for all of you. It's called the toast. It's a toast to each and every one of you, to your magic and to your health. And may you too find an unexpected journey in your life. And also, thank you, Tommy, and thank you, everyone, for having me. This one's for you. Thank you so much, Tommy. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
I hope that was a fitting performance for your show. And I once again thank you so much for having me, Tommy.
It was my pleasure. This hour went by so fast. We got some applause here, and
Thank you so much.
well, I think this is my friend Chico. Yeah. So let's see. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a new
I
one.
appreciate those comments. Thank you so much.
Yeah. See. Yeah. I thank you guys for watching today. Really appreciate it. And Chris, thank you so much. If you will wait a few minutes so we can talk a little bit after the show.
You got it.
We'll move you backstage for a minute. And once again, thank you so much for everything that you've said and all the beautiful performances. You rock, and thank you for being my friend. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tommy.
And ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's episode of Magic and Mysticism. But before we go, I want to share a quote from Keller of Penn and Keller, who says generally magicians don't know what to say, so they say stupid and redundant crap like, here I am holding a red ball. In other words, trying to come up with something better. Anyway, I thought it was fitting for what we were talking about today. Next week's guest is a very good friend of mine, who I met again when I was studying under Kenton at his house, and his name is Pablo Amira, and he is one of the top mentalists in the world, and at a very young age. And however, it won't be on Friday because he has a gig, and so we will be moving it a day late to Saturday, March 6th. So mark that in your calendars. It's going to be something you want to watch. Also, remember Faust and Company. You can see that on Facebook Live, I believe. And Chris always has some amazing people on his show. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, myself and some other friends are doing a virtual interactive magic theater. And you can go to omarillusion.nyc, not only for information, but to actually watch the show. And finally, in March, what is it popping up? What? So I'm getting more and more announcements every week, and we have one more comment. Yeah, somebody is saying that's good. I have a gig too, so that's right. Yeah, you told me that. So that is my friend Chico. Okay, so that's the end of the show. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you again on Saturday, March 6th. Have a great week, and remember to be magical.